What's up, Grappler fans? After neglecting my Dodge for a few weeks, maybe at least a month now, I think it's time to fix this power steering issue. If you saw my last video about the 6.7 power stroke swap, I had to bring all my trucks to my new house. Work had me move into a new state, and I'm kind of getting settled in now, but I've had a ton of work on this house. The market's crazy right now, and I ended up kind of taking what I could get. I'm happy with where I'm at, but the house needed some work, so I've been redoing floors, replacing, appliances and toilets and all kinds of crap just to get this house ready for our baby girl that's coming. And finally got the nursery set up, got the floors done in there, got the crib built. Still got to decorate in there a little bit, but my wife can handle that. I finally am getting a chance to work on this thing. As you can see, she's not looking too hot with a tarp over it. I noticed after I got here and it started raining every single day that the top of the door was leaking a little bit. So we'll get in there and see how that's looking. I cleaned it up some before I tarped it. And you can see there's a nice little collection of tree crap here. She's already got a little bit of patina on her for 1992. That's pretty impressive how kind of crusty it's looking already, but she's a workhorse, not too worried about her. But we'll get her untarped, pop the hood, see if we can figure out this issue. As y'all can see, this is one of my few vehicles that does not have NITOs on it. The only one I have that's registered and street legal, ready to go. So we'll try to fix that soon, but first we got to get this thing out of the backyard. It's been stuck in this spot since I bought the house. So we'll see if we can get in here, see how it's looking. I know I had some mildew issue. That's how I noticed the leak. So we'll see if I took care of that or not. Oh yeah, we're looking good. So this, well, maybe not. There's a little bit of something going on there, but this was getting kind of white and gross here, so I sprayed some vinegar on it and let it dry out in the sun before I tarped it. But this should be what is going to fix this thing. Let me pop the hood and kind of explain some more. But we've got a vacuum pump in here, and I mentioned in my video about transporting this thing that she quit working right when I pulled in the backyard here, trying to turn with the trailer. Look at all that crap falling off of there. That's gross. I probably should have cleaned off the hood first before it all ends up in the engine bay. Anyway, we've got a vacuum pump here and a power steering pump right there. And when I pulled in here full lock trying to get this trailer through the gate, power steering completely quit, and I barely even made it back this far because the trailer was about to hit the side of the fence, so I had to go back and forth a bunch of times. Y'all know how that goes. And yeah, no power steering. So I quickly diagnosed it as a power steering pump because the power steering pump wasn't working. So new power steering pump, still didn't work. I then figured out that this vacuum pump here has a gear that goes into this forward part of the engine here, and it runs through and has a little shaft and interlocking kind of mechanism that turns power steering pump. Well, I noticed something wasn't right when I took it apart, but I figured it had to be the pump. It's actually on the vacuum pump side, not the power steering. So that's why I got the new one. We'll see if that fixes the issue. I'll show you what's going on. Let me take this thing apart and we'll get started on that. Let me get my tools set up here because I've been robbing tools from this project. I usually have them just all sitting right here ready to go because I figured out what sizes I need, but I've had to do so much else. So here's the new part. We'll see if this works out well. I'll tell y'all more about where I got this thing from. Pretty excited about the company that I reached out that kind of remans these things. It looks like pretty good quality, but we'll see. All right, just to help y'all out real quick with sizes if y'all end up having to work on one of these. So I started with disconnecting these power steering rigid lines from the power steering pump. This one that's closer to the engine and on the bottom that actually connects straight into the power steering pump. It's an 18 millimeter, or that works at least. Then I just disconnected the hose with the clamp from this rigid pipe that kind of comes out of the pump. That one's not removable. I also want to mention this connector right here plugs in right behind power steering pump on the side of the block there, and that'll be in the way. Also have this little hose that just has a little like pinch clamp thing. Pretty easy to get that off. And then two bolts, one up top and kind of outboard, and then one down around in here. Those are 15 millimeters to get the actual vacuum pump off. If I run into anything else I got to take off, I'll let y'all know. Sometimes they have like a little support bracket that attaches to the motor to, you know, help with torque. But I think that's all I've got. I'm gonna keep loosening stuff and see if I can yank that thing out of here. I got these two big 15mm bolts out that connect the vacuum pump. I did notice there's a vent line or some kind of drain line for probably the oil coming from the block that goes to the bottom of the pump. But I'm gonna go ahead and jiggle this thing and see if I can get better access to it, and see if this thing is free now. Put that cap back on. Oh yeah, she's coming right out. So I'm gonna try to get this kind of part of the way out and rest it, and then get that last line out of the way. Last time when I did this, I kept the vacuum pump attached to the engine and just took the power steering pump off, which was pretty difficult. These bolts are hard to get to, and I'm going to show y'all how I can tell the difference between the vacuum pump being messed up and the power steering pump. So y'all just bear with me for a little bit as I get this thing out of here. There's that line I got to disconnect. This isn't going to sit here as pretty as I thought. It's pretty cool seeing like the gears and everything in there. You see that? This thing came out pretty easy. You can see here where the oil drain line was connected, so that came off. That was also a 15, and these power steering bolt nuts are 15mm as well. I got those loosened up. Before I get any farther, I wanted to show y'all something I was concerned about when I replaced this last time, and I brought it up to the guy I bought this new vacuum pump from. This obviously the old one, as dirty as it is. I'm missing a stud right here. There should be a bolt coming through, a stud, you know, and a nut right here. I don't know when that got lost, but it's been gone for a long time, and apparently these vacuum pumps can crack right here because you've got that, you know, beefy 12 valve Cummins putting power to the front end of this thing, and then this is putting, you know, power to your this is putting fluid to your actual like power steering box, your gearbox. And there's a lot of leverage, you know, if you got bigger tires, heavy truck, you can actually, you know, torque this thing off of here. And that's why some of them would have a piece of metal coming off of this one connecting to the block. Now what he recommended I do, since this is totally missing, you can see there's a gap right here in this one that's missing, as well as this one here. There's this gap. So when I was talking to him about that, he actually recommended putting some spacers in there. There we go. All right, so this is what I thought was broken on here. Obviously, see, there's nothing wrong with this one. This is a new one. But what actually was the issue inside this pump, hope y'all can see this, there's one tooth and two teeth. The teeth broke off, and now it's just jiggling around in there. That's what's wrong with this vacuum pump, and that's why it wasn't turning the power steering pump, because these little teeth lock in perpendicular to these little teeth and spin this bad boy. So that's been my problem all along. I only had, you know, a day or so to try to fix this thing, and I slapped the power steering pump on it, didn't do anything. You can see this seal was probably bad with how much grit is on here anyway. So I believe I got a new gasket with the pump. If not, that's gonna really suck, but that's definitely my problem. And this is probably the best way to tell if you have a power steering pump that's bad or a vacuum pump. The vacuum pump's only 2 bolts and a couple lines to disconnect. It's really not that hard to get out. Go ahead and separate these things and figure out which one is broken if you have a mechanical failure, and then order the right part. Me, I went and bought a part, slapped it on there, didn't work, figured it out, looked into it more. Wouldn't recommend doing that. So if you're having power steering issues with your first gen Cummins, I'd recommend just pulling this part off of here, diagnosing it, and then buying the right part the first time. Save you some time and money. So now I'm gonna look into getting another stud or a bolt for this piece, and I will come back out here to this project and hopefully throw the new pump on. It looks the same. Hopefully it actually is and has all the fittings and everything. So I'll take another look at that and I'll get back with y'all. Before I forget, I want to show y'all these spacers he sent so y'all could see how those would fill up that space, and also how to remove these studs, since some of you may be dealing with a bad power steering pump. So if that's your issue and you need to get these studs out to put into the new pump, real quick way is just to take 2 of the nuts from it. So I'm taking this longer stud out because this is one that is missing. It's a long one, it looks like, because it's one that needs a spacer. Put one on backwards. So the you know, the part you'd normally put the wrench on, put that on first. Get that thing tightened down there far enough to where you can get another one on there. I'm sure a bunch of y'all have seen how to take a stud out like this before, but in case you haven't, you can put 2 of these things on there, tighten them together, and that way as you loosen it, it has something to kind of push up against, and it stops the nut from spinning on the stud, and the stud has no choice but to spin with it. So you can see I got these 2 nuts sitting there like that. I'll tighten them together. It's a 15 and I'll use an adjustable. So I got this 15 here, and that thing set to around 15. All right, now should be able to lefty-loosey this rig off of here. Yep, just like that. I guess these aren't tight enough together. There we go. Yeah, sometimes they'll loosen up on you, and then your whole nut deal starts spinning, but you need the whole stud to spin with it. So if I get a bolt, I won't need a nut, but if I get a stud, I will. So we'll just kind of see what they have. Main thing is the threads, and that the length is good. All right, there you go. So that's out. I'm gonna take this whole setup to the hardware store. Try to find a bolt that looks a little something like that. All right guys, I'm back from the hardware store. As I mentioned, it rains here all the time. It did rain some, and it's still thundering out here. It's also airplane flying over, but a little bit of thunder here and there. We'll see how long I can work on this before it starts raining again. One thing I did was I noticed I needed to remove the actual little bung kind of thing fitting that that rigid line needed to come off of, or actually the flexible line needed to come off of, that last one that I removed. So I took that off before I left, but let me show you what I got here. So this is the stud that I took with me with a nut on it. You can kind of see it in the bag there, hopefully. And this is the bolt that I just bought. So we matched up the threads, and I think it's a different size head. I don't think it's a 15, but it should be the same length and same threads. So we're gonna see if that'll work. All right, so I just reinstalled the stud the same way I took it off, and you can see I got these spacers in here now, and I started to throw this bolt in. I don't have it pressed in all the way yet, but I wanted to go ahead and show y'all before I went any farther. And here's that little oil fitting there at the bottom. I just noticed there's a spider crawling on the camera, so y'all might end up seeing him at some point. So yeah, I got a little oil fitting on here now, and these are all kind of loosely in place with the spacers, which hopefully will brace this thing a little better in the future. And then I'm going to kind of just seat that seal, hopefully pushing it together, and then tighten it down some. See, I might end up just having to keep tightening it, but there we go. I'm going to go ahead and finish installing the power steering pump onto the vacuum pump, and then put it all in there together, just the way I took it out. So we've got 3 nuts for the 3 studs, and then I got to figure out what size that bolt head is. It's a little bit bigger, might be a 17. I'm going to try to stick this guy back in here in pretty much reverse order. I don't know if y'all noticed, but I did take the intercooler pipe off because it was in the way. It's pretty easy, just a couple hose clamps, and I just kind of covered the edge there. But here's my new gasket. I saw in the directions there's kind of a tip. You can use like some thread or something to just kind of hold it in place, and that it should go on dry. But I'm gonna just see how this thing goes and see if I need to go dig some out. But I'm gonna try to just stick this guy in here and then connect everything up. We'll see. The gasket's already fallen off once, so might be a challenge. Oh man, I just dropped it. Come on. This thing's kind of heavy. Turn this way. All right, while that's loose, I'm gonna try to get this bolt through the gasket and see if it'll kind of self-align without tearing anything up. I don't want to rip that new gasket because the old one I have is shot. I know there's some gaskets in each like section of this vacuum pump too, and that's probably why the thing was leaking so much. These things are kind of known to leak, so hopefully this new part is in better shape with the fresh rebuild on it. Okay, that one's kind of going in place. I'm gonna crawl underneath and get the other one in. As much oil as was coming out of this vacuum pump, there was a pretty considerable oil leak, so hopefully we'll be a little bit better off here. It didn't seem like this thing leaked too much oil or used too much between changes, but I haven't changed the oil in it yet, so we'll see. I bought it and it needed an oil change, and then drove it probably 3,000 more miles, so it's time for that as well if I can get this thing on the road. Now I'm starting with this rigid power steering line, and then I've got the flexible one to put on, and this vacuum hose here that actually goes up to like the brake booster. That's one thing I probably should have mentioned earlier, but you can kind of ops check your vacuum pump by pulling this vacuum line off here, which goes to it. I actually did do this earlier. That's how I ended up buying a power steering pump, because I was like, the vacuum pump's working fine. Pulled this off while the truck was running, put my finger on the end of it, and I could feel it pulling the vacuum very strongly. You can use a gauge and make sure, but I was like, yeah, this thing's definitely working. So I thought there was nothing wrong with the vacuum pump, and is the little bit of troubleshooting I did and led me to replacing the wrong part. It's mechanically broken though, so the actual vacuum pump's working fine, but back here at the back of it is where it broke. So I'm gonna keep installing this stuff. I'll update y'all. It's pretty basic, you know, just make sure you don't forget anything. It's real easy to forget this electrical connector right here. This is the one that is in the way. It goes to the block if you try to take it off. I'm gonna go ahead and do that now, because like I said, it's easy to forget. But you know, just do a real good ops check on everything, leak check when you're done. But I'm gonna keep connecting, and we'll see if this thing works here in a bit. So one thing could forget is that all the power steering fluid came out when I separated the pump from the vacuum. So I'll make sure I add some of that, and try to get the level right on it. And also, before I go too crazy with this thing, I do have the intercooler pipe totally removed, so I'm gonna need to make sure I do something about that. Let's see here, that's too full. Great, that's all gonna leak out. I might start this thing up with the intercooler pipe still removed, just because I covered up this opening right into the engine, but for about a month there's been a nice hole right here going into my intercooler, and I'm not sure if there's anything living in there, like lizards or something. There's a bunch of lizards around here, so I might try to scare whatever it is out by doing that. And with that, I'd like y'all to comment below. Let me know if you think this thing's gonna fire up. I've had the negative terminal disconnected from the battery, and we're gonna try to fire this thing up, see if the power steering works. So y'all go ahead and comment right now if you think it's gonna work. Do you think I fixed it? Do you think the cops are coming for me? I'm gonna go ahead and throw this intercooler pipe back on here. Hopefully there's not a lizard living in here. We will see what happens. If I suck up a lizard, this thing is not gonna be happy. But sealing it back up, I've been making a bunch of noise. Hopefully whatever was in there would have ran out. And next time I will bag both sides of the pipe whenever I disconnect it. But I didn't think that this was going to be a month-long deal for me to get back to it. But unfortunately, life happens. Had that pipe burst in my house, and I had to deal with that. Get the house ready for baby mama and the baby. So she's been neglected out here, the old Dodge, but we're gonna get her back on the road hopefully after this. We'll see what else it needs. Anything that sits up tends to complain, and it's just really not good for them. So we might have some bigger issues after this, messing with these band clamps and we'll get this thing fired up, hopefully. If the battery's not dead, if something else didn't happen to it. I just checked all the fluids, changed my shirt because I was super sweaty. I'm feeling kind of confident that it should start up. Might have to be jumped, but we'll see. I'm thinking everything should be working, in which case I would be able to move the trailer a little bit, get out of the backyard, drive to O'Reilly's hopefully, get some oil, because this oil is blacker than the bottom of freaking Mariana's Trench or something. Like, it is black. It needed to be changed bad, and I didn't have time to change it, honestly. I had places to be and stuff to haul, so the workhorse has been abused and it's complaining. That's why it's having problems. You know, you got to maintain stuff, but hopefully get this part fixed and we can start back on the maintenance, kind of go over this thing and put some nice Nitto tires on it, hopefully. Y'all comment before I start this thing up what tire type. You know, you got the Nitto Trail Grappler, Ridge Grappler, Mud Grappler. They got the new Recon Grapplers. I don't know if y'all have seen those. They're an all-terrain, kind of like the Ridge Grappler. I don't want to ramble too long, but which tire do you think I should put on here? What size? These are 33s. Also, this is my step from my hot tub. Works great for getting up here, but it's in the way for this. So these are 33-inch Falcons on 18-inch wheels. I'm tempted to put factory 16-inch steel wheels, kind of like what's on this yellow truck over here. This is my 71 crew cab that's waiting to be saved and swapped, but something like that. Obviously not as rusty. A smaller factory steel wheel, maybe some nice hubcaps, and obviously here's the 2016 6.7 Power Stroke sitting on 38s, waiting for the black crew cab body. So 33s or 35s, what do y'all think I should do, and which tire? And like I said, I'm thinking that 16-inch wheel, so that does kind of limit my options. But if you think of a better looking wheel on here, let me know. So without delay, let's see if this thing does anything at all, if it has a different problem. Let's just try to start it up. Now, y'all may remember the process for starting this thing currently is a little wonky because it has a fusible link issue. These old trucks, the wiring kind of sucks, but I put my key in like normal. And let's see if it does anything, first of all. All right, saying wait to start. It's doing normal stuff. I gotta touch these two wires together. This sucker's hot wired. All right, let's see, it's this one and this one. No, it's maybe this one. Started right up. 1 month at least sitting here with a broken part on it. I touched the wrong wire together, but I finally figured it out and it started right up. This thing is super impressive. One of the most reliable trucks out there. Hopefully I don't break anything else on it, because it was annoying having to do that. It's so funny to me. I'm over here by the exhaust. This thing's straight piped, has an axle dump. It's really not even that loud back here. But you get up here by this 12 valve rattling engine, you can't even hear yourself talk. It's crazy how loud it is up here. So I'll also mention I left the cap loose off the power steering in case some of that extra fluid wanted to burp out because I overfilled it. Not the proper way to bleed it, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to check for oil leaks since there's some oil fittings there on this vacuum pump, and then we'll see if this thing wants to turn. Probably going to have some air in the lines. I don't really know exactly what the process for bleeding this is, but I'm going to just see. It's already been broken for this long and I kept turning it while it was broken, so I'm going to just try to turn and see if I have any power steering. That does not feel good. That feels still broken. Let's see here. I might need to look into how to bleed it a little bit. I might need to actually kind of turn it back and forth a few times with the weight off the front of the truck. Either way, I'm leaving this thing running. It needs to run. I forgot to mention one other thing I did before I started it up. It seems like there's a drain on the bottom of the fuel filter, which I did drain a little bit and in case there's some water in there. I do want to change the fuel filter as well when I change the oil, so I just wanted to mention that. I'm going to try to bleed the system by jacking up the front end and turning full lock to full lock. I should have just known to do that to begin with, but I couldn't remember exactly the process. I've got the front end jacked up right now, just above the little holes in the ground that it made. And we're gonna try turning this thing. Should still be kind of difficult, even with the weight off the tires, but I'll go all the way back this way. And this steering wheel is sticky. Still feels pretty stiff. I'm gonna watch in the engine bay, or have y'all watch, and see if it's burping any fluid out. I just felt it start working. It got way easier. All of a sudden, check this out. One finger, and you can hear the engine's idling down some. It's actually using the engine to turn the wheel. We have fixed it, boys and girls. That's awesome. Looks like we lost a bunch of fluid, and I'm losing a bunch of sweat, as I predicted. That's why I overfilled it. I have a little bit left. We'll see if it's gonna be enough. That looks good enough for me. I'm gonna get it off jacks and try to get this trailer backed up a little bit so it's out of my way. I'm not sure I'll be able to pull back and forth enough to get this thing out through the gate without doing that. So I'm just gonna back it up some, go from there. Go ahead and get that hooked up, and I'll check back with y'all. So I pretty much got to a point where the Dodge couldn't go any farther forward and the trailer couldn't go any farther backwards, because then the Dodge wouldn't fit next to it. So when I was stuck, I ended up just tearing down all this wood from the previous owner. Had like a pool here, and they had this weird 2x4, you know, overpriced little frame thing going on here. So that's gone now. I'm all sweaty again, but now I'm gonna hook back up to the trailer, get it over here where I wanted it anyway, and then I should be able to, you know, get unattached and drive out pretty normally and not have this tight squeeze anymore. So that's where I'm at now. Hopefully it'll work, and we can go get some oil for this thing. I probably won't change it today. I'm running out of daylight, but at least I can have everything ready to, whenever I get around to it, changing it, and that thing will be fresh and ready to go next time I need to do some work with this thing. That's where the trailer's at right now. so that way I can come at it from this way back in and hopefully pull it out instead of having to back it out. But for now, I'm gonna go get some oil for this thing, and eventually I'm planning on putting a gate back here so I don't have to deal with this one entryway to this weird U-shaped yard. But let's go get this thing some fresh oil because I know it needs it. Just grabbed 3 of the jugs of oil, oil filter. They didn't have a fuel filter in stock, and I also grabbed a little bit of Freon because the AC ain't holding up too well in here. So we're gonna get back on the road. But crazy story, I just ran into one of my instructors from A school that pretty much taught me how to work on helicopters or aviation in general. And he's still stationed up in North Carolina, and he's on his way like on vacation or something and had a bad alternator. So small world, we just talked for a little bit, but I'm gonna get back on the road. It's starting to rain a little bit, and with no AC I like having the windows down, so I'm gonna try to get home before it starts pouring. I just used my windshield wipers, and that was a terrible mistake. There's so much mud in these things, I can't see anything now. Typically don't get this thing into 5th until I'm on the highway, but I want to make sure it goes through all the gears fine. Seems like it's doing pretty good. I usually start in 2nd like this just because 1st is useless. Here, I'll start in 1st. Made it back to the house in the old work truck here. You can see I got some oil for it. I'll get to that later. Got to work tomorrow, and got a few other things to do around the house first. So that's gonna do it for this video. Thank y'all for watching. If you had concerns about your Dodge power steering, I hope I helped you. And if you're keeping up with projects and all the craziness I got going on with all these different trucks and moving and having a baby, thank y'all again for watching, coming back. I appreciate all of y'all that have subscribed. I invite you, if you haven't yet, to do so. Really enjoy making these videos for y'all. So any feedback, comments, likes, everything, I really appreciate that. Thanks again for watching. Take care, and check out Grappaholics on Instagram.